Hi, I'm Steve Levin, Security Best Practices Lead at Palo Alto Networks. Welcome to the fourth video in our series about quantum computing and its impact on security. With me again are two of our Palo Alto Networks quantum technology and cryptography experts, Rishu and Phil. Our first three sessions focused on the security threat from quantum computers, the impact of threats from cryptographically relevant quantum computers, planning the transition to a quantum-resistant network, and what you can do to protect your business now. The next sessions focus on quantum key distribution and quantum random number generators. Today's session focuses on post-quantum cryptography and how long it might take to transition to new post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. When I was doing some quick research on security, I came across several acronyms, PQC, QRNG, and QKD to name a few. Let's start with the first one, PQC. Richu, what are PQCs and how do they help secure us in a post-quantum world?
In cryptography, specifically post-quantum cryptography, which is PQC, refers to a cryptographic algorithm that are thought to be secure against a cryptanalytic attack by a quantum computer. The problem with currently popular algorithms is that their security relies on one of the three hard mathematical problems: the integer factorization problem, the discrete logarithmic problem, or the elliptical curve discrete logarithmic problem. All of these problems could be easily solved on a sufficiently large or powerful quantum computer running Shor's algorithm. In contrast to the quantum threat to current public key algorithms, most of the symmetric cryptographic algorithms are considered to be relatively secure. So currently, post-quantum cryptography research is focused on 6 different approaches, 3 of which are top runners today. Lattice, this approach includes cryptographic systems such as learning with errors. The NTIRU and Crystal Kybers are examples of this. Hash-based, this includes cryptographic systems such as Lamport signatures, the Merkle signature scheme, the XMSs, the Sphinx. Their primary challenge is that for a hash-based public key, there is a limit on the number of signatures that can be signed using the corresponding set of private keys. The stateful hash-based signature system like XMSs that's proposed for code signing is an example of this, and we will see that it'll have its own limitations as well. The third, code-based. This includes cryptographic systems which rely on error-correcting codes, such as the Michaelis and Bike. In fact, Post-Quantum Cryptography Group at the European Commission has recommended that Michaelis public key encryption system as a candidate for long-term protection against attacks by quantum computers. The fourth approach, of course, is already in use today, which is symmetric key-based. So provided one uses sufficiently large key sizes, the symmetric key cryptographic systems like AES are already resistant to an attack by a quantum computer. The use of symmetric key based on management systems and protocols in Kerberos, or even the 3GPP mobile network authentication, makes them inherently secure against an attack by a quantum computer. Now, for the last 2 schemes that have come under scrutiny are one isogeny based and 2 multivariate. Isogeny, these cryptographic systems rely on the properties of isogeny graphs of elliptical curves over finite fields. Diffie-Hellman-like key exchange, elliptical curve Diffie-Hellman key exchange methods are examples in widespread today. Another widely noticed construction, of course, in isogeny is Psych, and that was spectacularly broken in 2022. Multivariate, of course, includes Rainbow, which is based on a difficulty of solving systems of multivariate equations. However, again, Rainbow for a digital signature scheme was also cracked in 2022. Every application using encryption today will need to migrate to PQCs in order to remove the classical cryptography vulnerabilities. And to that effect, NIST has been working on evaluating submissions from researchers across the world to arrive at the finalists. Now, from the round 4 selections in 2022, NIST selected Crystal Kybers, Bike, Michaelis, and HQC, one lattice-based and others code-based. Now, if you look at the digital signature algorithms, Crystal's dilithium and Falcon, lattice-based again, and Sphinx, which is hash-based, were the top 3 that were selected. But recently, in July 2023, we found out 40 more digital signatures were posted by NIST. And again, they are just opening it up for review from global researchers, ethical hackers, and others to find out if some of these can also make it to the list. This effort, lasting more than 4 submission rounds and over a decade worth of research, has reached a point where NIST has now put out a call for action. And so the shortlisted key exchange or digital signatures that you see in asterisks in this particular slide here are the ones that are chosen for standardization process. And this has been defined across FIPS draft 186.5 and NIST SP 856A and 56B. It's also important to note that the 3 schemes that are still in the front running, lattice, code, and hash, are all important. If lattice proves to be vulnerable to a CRQC, NIST will have to respond with either a code or a hash-based selection. And this is why crypto agility, that we will discuss in some time, will be key to how you build the foundational framework of your migration. Steve, while this is a little about the post-quantum ciphers and cryptography itself, the adoption of these and the implementation of these can come in TLS 1.3 and sometimes even in the QUIC protocol. IPsec VPN, SSL VPN, or SSH for authentication, code signing, and PKI certificates will lead us to the internet infrastructure running on a secure set of quantum algorithms that are resistant to harvesting attacks and can combat potential vulnerabilities in classical cryptography. So the support for PQC end-to-end across your endpoints, network devices, and services will be critical to achieving this post-quantum secure world. Phil, bring us home with how large is the scope of the PQC migration? What should CIOs and CISOs focus on for company strategy?
Yeah, this is a really good point. I mean, it's going to be a pretty large project, right? It's going to be an end-to-end transformation from PQCs, from their classic crypto algorithms. And so web servers, application servers, endpoints, browsers, VPN client servers, and so much more are going to have to be looked at and upgraded. This also includes your network for site-to-site, so VPN, don't forget data at rest, your certificate authorities, SSL proxies, SSH clients and servers are all going to have to be reviewed and upgraded. So again, a very large effort, and it's going to take a long time to convert, multiple different phases and things like that. And don't forget, PQCs are going to have larger key sizes and digital signatures, so your encrypted payloads are going to be a lot bigger, and this can definitely affect your performance and capacity, especially if you're using slower links like satellite links. These things have to be taken into account. So the right thing to do right now is get the right people involved, do a lot of testing, and understand the PQC impact versus the security and performance trade-offs and things like that.
So cryptography isn't something that changes very often. It often takes many years and even decades to fully vet the technologies to gain trust. Phil, if the PQCs are a new replacement, how do we trust them right away if we need to move quickly to secure our sensitive information?
Another great question, Steve. And so when we take a look at what's happened historically, right, we have to give NIST a lot of credit here, Steve. And so NIST started back in late 2016, early 2017. They made a call to action. There was quite a few people who responded to that. We got a lot of submissions, almost 70 submissions in round 1. And then throughout the years, we went through the different rounds and we kind of whittled them down, and we selected the ones that we believed had the best performance and security trade-offs that will work in a production world, right, Steve? There's often a lot of secure algorithms, but they're too heavy, right, for production uses. And so round 3 is where the industry really started to take note, because this is the ones that NIST was believing would reach standardization. And unfortunately, as Rishu mentioned, we did lose a couple of PQCs in round 3, and that takes us to round 4 where we're at today. And so if you have a look at this chart that I have here, the ones that are in asterisks are the ones that NIST is proposing to take to standards. In the August timeframe, they made one more last call to the industry to get comments and to see if we find any more vulnerabilities or any more negative aspects with these PQCs. And if we don't find anything, around the end of November, we're going to proceed to standardization according to NIST plan. So we're moving fairly quickly there, and the target is to reach standardization by early 2024. So unfortunately, Rishu, this isn't as straightforward as it seems. Often transitions take an awful long period of time, right? And so in your experience, how has these impacted, enterprises and organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil. So to make this transition efficient, backward compatible, and interoperable, there are mandates from the NSA, like the CNSA 2.0 algorithm suite, with recommendations on replacing cryptographic suites, as well as timelines to meet. And the most recent quantum readiness memo that came out from DISA, NIST, and NSA also highlights the inventory process across your IT, IoT, OT, critical infra, and so on. So, and this also talks about, of course, adoption of the newer ciphers, prioritizing supply chain, starting cryptography inventory, excellent resource, of course. While those sources are from the future, we have sufficient history to back the lengthy process and the timelines to upgrade cryptography. So for instance, if you look at the dates when a particular SSL or TLS version was deprecated, and then take into account of all the websites that still support these deprecated SSL TLS versions, you would be shocked. Let me give you an example. TLS 1.1 was deprecated in 2021, and here we are in 2024, and about 40.6% of web servers still support TLS 1.1. You might argue this data is skewed and doesn't take into account if the same web servers also support 1.3, but that's the catch here. To continue to support something that's deprecated is like leaving a can of worms open, just hoping that they won't come out. But in due time, they will. So it might take some time, but the vulnerability will be found and your services will be impacted. Now let's look at what Qualys SSL Lab reports after scanning about 150,000 of the most popular sites across the world. The adoption of TLS 1.3 is still closer to half of the websites that support 1.2. Well, we already know that 1.3 only uses PFS, or perfect forward secrecy ciphers, with ephemeral keys, which can almost instantly combat any of the man-in-the-middle attacks or eavesdropping attacks, many others. Typically, a majority of TLS 1.3 results, again, are based on SSL sessions terminating at a reverse proxy or a CDN proxy, and by no means is a true measure of the servers or services that are supporting 1.3.
Wow, Ritu, this makes it clear that it takes a long time to transition to new protocols. And Phil pointed out that it takes a long time to vet PQCs. Phil, what happens if a vulnerability is found in a PQC that I'm using?
So Steve, there's really two ways to handle it, right? And I'm going to talk about the first one here with this slide, and that's transitioning with hybrid keys. And so the way they look at this slide is you see the timeline there at the top, and we're ranging from where we are today, basically 2023 into 2024 and so forth, until we think a cryptographically relevant computer is going to be coming online, right? And so we have two rows of information there, or technologies. One is the KEM, which is the key exchange mechanism, and the other is the digital signing algorithms, right, that we have there on the bottom. And so if you take a look at when NIST plans to standardize, it's early 2024, and that's when we're going to start shifting to these hybrid PQCs, Steve. And so we'll be using a combination of multiple different technologies to produce a symmetric key to encrypt the data, right? And so this hybrid capability is going to continue on for quite a few years, at least 5, 8, if not 10 years, to where we build the confidence and the stability of these new PQCs to take over on a one-for-one basis. And so similarly with the DSAs, they're going to be a couple of years behind because the priority is a little bit lower on the DSA side, and you're going to see them coming online a few years after the KEMs come online in a hybrid way, and they're going to carry on a little bit longer. The most important things about these hybrid technologies is that they're based on RFCs that are backwardly compatible, which simply means we won't break the network if the other side can't speak the same language, Steve. And so here, I sort of have an example that I want to talk to the audience about, and this is using VPN hybrid key exchange as an example on how a hybrid key is built. And for VPN, there's two RFCs that you should be interested in, and that's RFC 9242 and 9370. And this gives us the ability to form a hybrid key using both classic as well as PQ mechanisms, right? And so here I have an example. I'm going to produce a key using 4 different technologies. The first one, I'm going to use Diffie-Hellman Group 20, and this is my classic key exchange. And then I'm going to add 3 additional rounds using PQCs. One is Crystal Kyber, then Bike, and then HQC. Now the resulting key is based on 4 different technologies. And in order for a malicious person or some bad actor to get a hold of this information and reverse engineer the key, all 4 technologies have got to fall to a vulnerability. And that's pretty rare. So with this, it brings us to the second point, and that's crypto agility and how it affects the migration strategy. And so, Rishu, in your experience, what are the most important things operationally to think about crypto agility?
Yeah, Phil, actually, I do want to add a point to your previous response. So, as you just talked about VPN and how you can secure VPN with multiple post-quantum ciphers, I want to emphasize on the IETF draft that's available today for TLS. So this draft specifically talks about PQC hybrid key exchange as a proposal to bridge the timeline of classical asymmetric key exchanges falling to the quantum attack, and then the time required for the industry to vet any newly standardized PQCs for key exchange. So if a vulnerability is found in either, then the hybrid key exchange will take care of buying that additional time for security. So that would look, these hybrid key exchanges would look like a concatenation of an existing classical cipher and its curve, and a post-quantum cipher and its curve. So just wanted to kind of add that to what you were talking about for VPN, kind of also is in the theme of what crypto agility would help with. Now, going back to your original question, I'd say application teams and managing services is required by the IT department. So IT department typically manages corporate devices, enabling suites of ciphers, protocols, and ports to support. So let's assume one or more of the cipher in use falls to a quantum attack. How quickly do we think that the apps or the IT team can actually recover? So if this process was built in, which is the crypto agility process was built in from day one, then you would be able to actually answer my question, and it would be definitive. That answer could have been either hours or a week, or worse, a month. But today, we don't have that process in place. This recovery process is what I'm referring to and establishing as crypto agility. The replacement of a bad cipher with a good, strong one, and the blocking of the bad or the weak one without taking down a data center of apps or RMAing corporate devices for BIOS upgrades. We should be able to achieve this in far less time, and that's what crypto agility brings to the table. Every certificate expires, and every algorithm evolves. With advancements in computing power, the risk of breaking crypto increases every day. So sudden compromises or deprecation of outdated algorithms or even the newly suggested PQCs can seriously impact the security in your organization. We know SHA-1 and DES are no longer recommended and are considered weak ciphers, just as Rainbow and Cyc were deemed vulnerable to cryptographic, just a classical computer actually. So cryptographic systems must be switched over to newer encryption systems to stay secure. Putting a sustainable practice and process in place to reduce liability of lost assets or compromised user access can be achieved with crypto agility. Some steps I'd recommend companies to take to remediate these risks are gain visibility by inventorying assets, endpoints, network infrastructure, and even servers. Ensure that all of your cryptographic assets are secure and up to date with the standards, with the latest industry standards. Shift from inherently insecure static processes to automated dynamic cryptographic operations for issuance and renewals. This will also help with scaling your operations. Now, deploy anywhere should be your mantra. Run trusted and highly scalable PKI in your data center, in the cloud, or any other location by adopting a modular algorithm approach. Scale without limits when you've adopted crypto agility. So that improves security by quickly identifying, remediating any self-signed or wildcard certificates that are not in compliance with your company policies. So this should kind of summarize some of the remediations that I would recommend for achieving crypto agility.
Wow. This is a titanic change for the industry. and I'm sure some of us are going to need some help with our quantum readiness journey. Phil, if we're interested in getting more information about PQCs, how they work and where NIST is with the standardization efforts, where can we get this information?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, Steve. And so I put together, a couple of slides for the audience here. And the first one really talks about, what NIST, CISO is doing. And if you haven't started researching this information, this is probably a pretty good place to start. They give a lot of good information about what the quantum threat is, what their impact is going to be, and how to basically get started. Now, on the right-hand side, these are a lot of technical RFCs and references for your technical team, is understanding what each one of the shortlisted PQCs look like, what the performance trade-off is, how the technology works, and so forth. And so the top half are your key exchange mechanisms, and the bottom half is the DSA digital signing mechanisms. Now, I thought it would be interesting to put this slide up here, and this is to give you an idea of what some of the industry giants are doing. So the first one is an open source project. This is where the PQCs and the libOQS are all being formed, and if you haven't looked into this, this will give you a lot of information on how things are going to fold out with a lot of the open source communities and how vendors and applications are going to take advantage of all of these standardized PQCs. Now, the other ones, of course, is Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Cloudflare. They're very influential in the cloud space and in the internet space. They have been extremely proactive in their research of bringing, post-quantum capabilities online, and they're proceeding ahead of standards as well. So understand what they're doing, and it can influence what you may be doing in your strategic vision as well. So this slide I put together for the technologists that are really interested in finding out more about the standards that Rishu and I have been talking about in post-quantum VPN, as well as the post-quantum SSL TLS world, what's coming, and how the hybrid keys are going to work. So this last slide is really a bunch of white papers that NIST has put out. And again, it's very influential for those people that haven't dug deeply into it, that isn't far along in their crypto inventory and their journey to a quantum readiness state. And so this information here is going to provide you a lot of good high-level overviews on where the technology is going and how you should get started.
Wow, thanks, Phil, and thanks, Richu. This has been a real eye-opener about so many aspects of post-quantum cryptography. First, it's clear that post-quantum cryptography will eventually replace today's classic cryptography. And it's clear that the PQC migration is likely to affect the majority of your network, your supply chains networks, and your partners' networks. So this won't be a quick rip and replace, because new standards won't be fully vetted for as many as 8 to 10 years, and it'll take even longer to reach full adoption across the web. The best way to bridge the gap and transition between classical and post-quantum cryptography is using hybrid ciphers that combine classical and post-quantum keys. Hybrid ciphers are backward compatible and provide protection if a PQC is compromised. Finally, you should develop crypto agility by qualifying and being ready to switch to multiple PQCs so that if a PQC is compromised, you can quickly change to a different PQC. Thanks for joining us. Join Richu, Phil, and I for our 5th video in the series, which explains quantum key distribution, which is an out-of-band key exchange with no known vulnerabilities to cryptographically relevant quantum computers.